Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the LGBTQ plus DataPride Tableau user group all about Tableau sets event today. We are super excited to have everyone here. My name is Lawrence Durbin. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm one of the co-leads of the DataPride Tableau user group. So real quick, just to highlight, what is the DataPride Tableau user group? We're a virtual community space to highlight, elevate, and bring together the LGBTQ plus community in data and its allies. And that means bringing knowledge sharing sessions, technical sessions, networking events for everyone across the LGBTQ plus community and the data fam. And we want to thank you all for being here. So let's go quickly through today's agenda. We're going to be looking at set actions, set education, and a Workout Wednesday highlight with our amazing panelists of speakers. As right after, we do some welcome and updates with everyone. And then during all of these speaking, we will have the Q&A and everything set up to go. And we will be wrapping up the event with some minor updates, a save the date for our next event, and even more. So as we said, welcome. We are super excited for today's event. We have a wonderful panel of amazing speakers from the data fam to talk about sets, different uses of them, and even some showing off and highlighting uses of sets and some of the challenges that can help you do more with sets and learn more. As said before, I am one of the co-leads, Lawrence Durbin, pronouns he, him. We are also joined by, of course, our other lovely co-lead, Sarah Carr, who is with us and going to be working with the audience today in the chat, as well as a little bit later when we have a little bit of an attendance prize for those who are here. Now, before we get into the actual presentation, we want to give a big congrats. Just last week, we had the announcement of all the 2023 cohort of the Tableau Ambassador program, which all of our panelists, including our co-lead, Sarah Carr, have all been renewed have either just joined or been renewed as a Tableau Ambassador. Super excited to have Sarah joining as a Tableau Ambassador in the Tableau user group space, as well as Steve, Ginny, and Erica, all in this amazing program. And we want to thank all of them for being here. Now, to our first event. We have Steve Adams, founder of VizDJ.com, to go through and talk to us about set actions. Steve.
Hi, Lawrence. Thank you very much. Let me just press on the share screen for option. So hi, everybody. Can you see my screen now?
Now we do.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much, Lawrence. So I'm going to try and take us on a whirlwind tour of a specific example of using sets. I'm also going to just very quickly whiz through the basic set, just in case there's anybody here that doesn't really see or know how we do sets. So my name's Steve Adams, brand new Tableau Ambassador, very excited. This is my first presentation since being a Tableau Ambassador, so I'm stoked about being here. I do talk quickly. I'm from the UK. I do hope you can understand my accent. First thing I want to do is really just talk about sets versus filters. The picture on the left-hand side is showing how filters typically are working, which is where we will apply a filter, we will leave some stuff behind, the debris, and then we will pass the output of that filter into potentially more filters, and then eventually end up with something at the very bottom of it. The prime difference between sets and filters is that the set allows us to refer to what's outside of the set as well as what's inside the set. So in fact, a filter is a subset of sets. And just in case you haven't seen it before, there's a brilliant blog post by the wonderful Bethany Lyons, written 5 years ago, but still absolutely cool on sets as well as set actions. So if you have a chance, do have a look at that blog post. I'm not going to go into it any more than that right now. Very quickly, what about setting up sets? How do we do that? It's very, very easy. Typically, we want to pick on a set a dimension which is going to create our set. So for example, maybe I want to pick on a customer and I want to create a set from here. Very easy to do, just right click, go to create, we pick our set, and the starting point is the general tab, which lists out every single customer, which in this case has got 800 values. But we can also do other things to define that set to make it more dynamic if we wanted to. So I could put a condition in, just like I can with a filter, or I can do a top, for example, just like I can with a filter. So let's just do that right now. Let's look at our top 10 customers based upon their sales. I could put a parameter in there as well, of course. If I click the drop down button here, we're not going to do that right now. But that's the easy way to create a set. That set can then be used in multiple ways. I could, for example, maybe just look at my subcategories, bring in my sales, and then I could drag in my set onto color, and we can see what proportion of our revenue is being driven by our top 10 customers, for example, based upon those sales. You can see the in-out on the marks card here. We can change that if we wanted to actually show the individual members in that set, which looks horrible, of course. What's happened in this case, we're looking at 10 values, all color coded. Looks like a duvet that my nan used to knit for me. And we've also thrown the customer name set into the filter. So now we're actually only looking at those top 10 customers in the detail. So we've got the ability to look at in and out of the set, as well as just within the set in this case, for example. Another thing we can do, though, is we can combine sets. So we can create multiple sets and combine them. There's two basic ways we can do that. The first way might be to, well, first of all, I need to create another set. So I'm going to go to customer name. And if we're going to combine sets, they need to be on the same dimension. So let's create another set on the same dimension. This time I'm going to do a bottom 10 based upon profitability of our customers. So let's just do that right now. And let's first of all visualize our customers. I'm going to do this on a scatter chart because I love scatter charts for looking at customer profitability. We're just looking at profit against sales on a scatter chart, and I'm going to drag in my customer names into the detail, change my mark type to a circle, and I can then drag in my profit set, and that's going to show me my top or bottom rather 10 loss-making customers, or I could drag in my top 10 sales ones. But what I might be interested in doing is actually looking at if there are any customers who are both in my top 10 sales but also in my bottom 10 profitability. So let's combine those two sets. To do that, I can click on those two sets, right click on here, you can see the create combined set option here, and then we get this lovely little Venn diagram guide to tell us, well, what are we actually going to do when we combine those two sets. In my case, I'm interested in combining, only looking at the members who are in both of those sets, but we can obviously do a full outer join style Venn diagram, or just ones which are in one set and not the other one, depending on which side they're actually put on the list here. I'm not going to bother naming this because I've got so little time anyway. Now I can just drag that set in just like I did before. I could put it onto color, for example, and we can see this naughty customer, Sean Miller. I'm not sure if he's in the room today, but he is generating a significant loss for us. And is also one of the largest sale generators in our organization. So clearly we want to do something with that. And that's why scatter charts are good for looking at outliers, for example. Another way to combine sets then is to use those sets in calculated fields. So for example, if I were to bring in my customer name on here, and again, bring in my sales, perhaps what I want to do then is filter based upon those top 10. One way to do that, there's always more than one way to do things in Tableau, which is why we love it so much. In this case, I'm just going to create a calculated field in customer top, and we're going to include that in our calculated field. So I could just drag in my customer set into sales one in here. Now that comes in, and that is actually already a valid calculation, because simplistically Tableau's looking at that on a row by row basis in the underlying data set, and it's validating whether or not that row belongs to the customer name set sales in this case. So if I clicked on apply, we could then just drag that. You can see we've got the true false for the Boolean type. We could drag that into color. And it's going to then color my top 10, or I could put that in the filter. Another way to combine that into a calculated field would be to maybe do an if statement, and we can apply if then normal application. But one of the things I like to do quite often is to use the in calculation. So I could say if my customer name is in a particular set, then do something. Or I could, again, treat that as a Boolean. But the nice thing is, if we actually just very quickly look at our helper on the right-hand side here, and we go to the in function, it's pretty cool because there's actually an expression here on the left-hand side and an expression on the right-hand side. So that set can be used in multiple different ways. Calculated field, calculation is valid, but you can see on the right hand side we can be referring to a set, and we can actually refer to lists as well. So there's lots of different things we can do with that in function, and specifically applying that to our sets is pretty cool. Okay, I've got that on the color here. I'm going to drag that into the filters, and then we're just going to look at the woohoo customers, my favorite ones, the ones that are generating us most of the money. That's all very well and good, but what I wanted to do was show you a very specific use case. So I've built a dashboard for the wonderful NHS, the National Health Service here in the UK. The use case here is we want to identify patients where we can optimize their performance. So you probably hear quite a lot that Tableau likes to access data sources which are thin and long. The NHS has got some very long data sets. And what I mean by that is that most patients, me included, have many, many different measures which are taken and recorded in the patient administration systems. Instead of actually having lots and lots of columns for each of those measures in there, typically what we do is pivot those down, and we end up having lots of measures on lots of different rows per patient. The sorts of measures that we're interested in this case is identifying whether a patient has had a condition, is taking a certain medication, or hasn't had a particular type of test. This particular dashboard was about identifying people who were at risk of cardiovascular disease, which in the UK is kills about 25% of people if they die prematurely. So it's quite an important risk to identify. And lots of research had gone into how to identify various different conflicting indicators based upon those patients. And here's just an example of one of the dashboards within this suite. It's about hypertension. And we can see that there are 4 areas within hypertension, which we've got multiple different indicators in there. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but just try and think about how this might apply. Because on the top left-hand side, we've got patients, 10 patients, who have got a blood pressure value of more than 180 over 120. We've then got a bunch of other patients with other different ranges within that blood pressure, 36 and 285, for example. On the right-hand side, then, we have cardiovascular disease risk management in hypertension. And we're identifying patients with other risk factors here. So I don't even know what QR risk is. Do you? No, don't need to. Doesn't matter. We've got 202 patients who have got that indicator. We've also then got other areas, so CKD management in hypertension, that's chronic kidney disease in hypertension. So this hypertension dashboard, the idea is to try and identify specific patients who have got an opportunity for optimization of their care because they're not getting perhaps medication, or they need a test to validate that they are or are not at risk of cardiovascular disease. So at the bottom of this dashboard, we've actually got an unfiltered list of patients. This is dummy data, so don't get too excited by Samuel Matthews being on here. But we do actually want to be able to get into the patient administration systems from here. So we've got a unique identifier code, which enables us to link in and look at that. But we've got 792 patients. We can't call all 792 of those patients in for an assessment. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about what assessments we want to focus on right now. And typically, it might mean that we're actually interested in looking at patients who have got one of those 3. I'm going to deselect this one here just for sake of example, one of those three indicators, or and perhaps this indicator here as well, for example, and also have the hypertension and chronic kidney disease with no EGFR, which is a measurement. So basically, there are patients who have not had a measurement, which have got hypertension risks, and therefore they are potentially at risk, and we want to optimize their care by giving them the right medication. So now we can see that we are doing an and/or filtering here, which will reduce the list number down to 9 in this particular case. So we can see the patients who have got all of those indicators. So there's an and/or here. It's one of these three. It's definitely got this one, and it's also got this one as well. But we don't want to necessarily filter out all the other metrics. So we're actually keeping those metrics in that list because we actually want to see that Amani Luna has got all of those different metrics at risk as well. And indeed, we're actually sorting them in this table by the people at the top are the ones which have got the largest number of indicators. So that's the use case. And there are, I refer to this as a basket mix because we're actually mixing and doing an and/or. But as I mentioned earlier on, we've got one dimension which has got all of these indicators in. So what I'm going to do is we're going to visit the Superstore. Why wouldn't we? Because that means you can actually think about how to apply this on the Superstore data set, and you'll probably be very familiar with it. So you'll understand what I'm doing in that context as well. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to create a simple filtered view, but this time we're going to look at subcategory instead of metrics or indicators, which is what I was referring to just now. So I'm going to look at subcategory. Let's go to our Superstore data set and drag in our subcategory. And we're going to do a basket mix across the 3 different categories. So I'm going to filter this first view down to just furniture. And we're going to look at the sales. And I'm going to create a set based upon subcategory, specifically to look at which items are of interest to us. So I'm going to select one of these for now. Let's bring on fastenings, and I can drag that into my color so we can see what we, oh, did I click the wrong one? I think I probably did. Let's show that set. And it was furnishings, not fasteners. There we go. So we can see that I've selected one of these items. So that's the bar chart that we were seeing earlier on. I want to be able to select one or more of these, but then do an or against, for example, a customer, which is ordering items within another category, as well as ordering items within the furnishings subcategory. So I'm going to actually delete these 2 sheets here, and I'm going to now duplicate what we've just done. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to change this now to the second category, which is office supplies. And I'm going to create another set for office supplies. And I'm going to choose fasteners just for now. And we're going to just edit that set. I'm going to call that office supplies. We've got fasteners set. I think I should have called this one something a bit clearer, because later on I'm going to refer to these in a calculated field, so I obviously need to know which one's which. I'm going to put this one onto color here. We're also going to show the set filter itself, so we can see that here. I'm just, for the sake of it, I'm going to put this into context, and I'm only going to show the relevant values in context, so we can actually see the specific subcategory items in this set on this view. I can do the same thing on my furniture item as well. So let's just put that into context. and show this in context. So that gives me a little bit of understanding of which of these items I could put into this particular set. We're now going to just duplicate this one again because we've got 3 items in category, as we all know, the last one being technology. So let's just remove this item from here, change the filter to technology, click on OK, and create a new set. We love having loads of sets because we can refer to them in a calculated fields and do whatever we want with them. This one we're going to choose copiers for, and I'm going to rename this set so I know what it is later on. Refer to it in my calculated field and bring that into color as well so we can see which one we've actually selected. So now we've got our ability to change the sets. Now later on, Ginny's actually going to show you how you set up set actions on the dashboard side. So I didn't want to bore you by doing that twice myself as well. So I'm going to jump through to that process later on without actually setting it up so that Ginny will have more fun with you on that one. But what we will be wanting to do then, of course, is identify which one of our customers have matched the criteria from the different selections we're going to be making. So let's just bring in our customer ID. For example, we'll bring in our customer name as well. And we're also going to bring in our subcategory value. And just to bring a measure into here, I'm going to bring in the quantity. So we can see now that we've got 6,016 rows, which is completely useless, way too much information. We're going to be using those bar charts to actually filter down to the most important customers based upon the selections we're looking to do. We are going to do that by bringing in a filter. So we're going to create something, a calculated field, which I'm going to call set filter. And we are going to think about what we need to bring into this field. So this filter, first of all, is going to be looking at the 3 different set values. So I'm going to check on a row by row level whether or not my subcategory fits into each of those individual sets. So if my subcategory is in the furniture set, then I'm going to put a 1 against it. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 against it. And my if statement will ring true. So what we're going to do on every single row then is we're going to say, well, if this meets the criteria for filtering, then put a 1 on it. But we need to be doing this at a customer level. So we need to be aggregating this at a customer level. So I'm going to be using a fixed level of detail to do that. So we want to be adding up all of those rows, which have got 1s and 0s. We want to be aggregating that at the customer level. So I'm going to use a fixed level of detail expression based upon the dimension of customer ID. And we are only going to include this item, this customer, if the value is greater than 0, i.e. it meets the criteria. And then we can do a cross comparison across all 3 of those sets. So I'm just going to add in an AND statement. And I'm going to paste that 1 back in. I'm going to then bring in the other 2 sets. So we are combining the value, the result of each of these evaluations into 1 calculated field. Now you could, of course, have 3 separate calculations. Don't know what's going on there, but hey ho, my computer's not playing nice with me today. Should have seen what it was doing earlier on. There we go. So now we're looking at the evaluation. We're just adding a 1 if the criteria is set for each of those 3 sets. But because we wanted an AND across them, that's obviously why we got an AND here. But of course, you can play with that logic whichever way you see fit. In my case, the use case was to use an AND here. So let's click on apply. Let's drag that into our filter. We can see that it's either true or false because there's a nice Boolean for us. If I click on OK, we can see that we've got much less rows in our database. I can't see exactly how many customers, so I've created a customer count worksheet as well. I'm going to drag the field set filter into there as well. and put a true on there. And that's now going to tell me that we've only got 12 customers which meet all 3 of those different criteria. So that's going to allow me to look at my basket, make sure which customers are buying all 3 of those those subcategories. What this will look like when we put it all together is something like this. So I've added in some color coding here, and at the moment I'm not doing any filtering at all, but we need to be adding set actions, which, as I said, Ginny's going to show you how to do that. But all I'm doing is saying, well, if I click on something here, I want to then add that value to the set. So now I've added furnishings to the furniture set. I want to add fasteners to the furniture set as well, and I want to add copiers to the furniture set. So we've drilled down to only having those 12 customers which are ordering items in all 3 of those subcategories. We get to see which of those 12 customers are. But as I said earlier on in my patients example, I didn't want to filter out all the other items. I just want to identify that we're definitely meeting the criteria. But we can also now see that this particular customer, Alejandro Valentin, is also ordering items in many other areas as well. But this is now an and/or scenario. So we could decide that we were interested in putting labels into that basket for the office supplies set. So now we're looking at customers who are ordering furnishings and either labels and fasteners as well as copiers. And again, we could do the combination across all of these. So now we can see that a much larger number of customers are doing that cross filtering. That was a very quick run through of the and/or filter. I hope that was very useful. I'm going to splash back to my very first page here, because I think if you haven't had a chance to make a note of that blog, you can always Google it. Tableau Bethany Lines Analytic Concepts to Express with Tableau Set Actions, if you want to have a look at that. So Lawrence, are there any questions at all?
So first off, I just want to say sets and me have always been a thing that it's one of those scary things for me. So this has just given me a little bit more to be able to go forth and actually work in sets, just seeing you work in that. So I just want to give you that. So thank you first off for that.
Thank you.
So the one question that we do have is, so of sets over, say, a calculated field with a big if-else statement that you can use to categorize things, for example. So like, because that's where I go, because I think SQL, and to be able to do that, then I go into just do that kind of same thing. What is the benefit of sets?
The benefit of sets in Tableau as opposed to the data set, you mean?
Yeah, the benefits of sets in Tableau compared to a big if-else calculated statement that would do the same
right
thing.
Okay, so the primary benefit for me in this scenario is that you can have that interaction now. So with set actions, my user is able to change what is in each of those individual sets. If you did that if else, and you'd have to hard code everything, or you'd be playing around with parameters, which would be really quite messy. So this gives you a huge amount of flexibility. It also allows you to use sets across multiple different worksheets as well as multiple different dashboards as well. So I said right at the very beginning, the benefit of a set over a filter is that you can play around with what's in the set, but you can also play around with what's not in the set. And again, both of those can be dynamic based upon the user interaction as well.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Very much so. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Steve, with that. I think that was the only question on that side. So thank you, Steve, for going through and all of that and so many different things with the sets, and really appreciate I'm going to have to go, as someone said, muck around with sets a little bit later myself. So now after seeing that, thank you so much.
I'll be happy to share my workbook so you can play around with that as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Now, moving on next, we have Ginny Moench, who is an enrollment management BI analyst at Appalachian State University, where she has worked since 2019. Super excited to have you here and go through so much different stuff. You also have been co-found at the Higher Education Tableau user group, and super excited to see what you have for us today. Ginny?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, and we can see you.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, is that coming across okay?
Yes, it is.
Great. All right, well, thank you so much. As Lawrence said, my name is Ginny Moench. I also go by Virginia. My pronouns are she, her, and I do work at Appalachian State University. And so since it's that time of year again, when students are back in school, I'm going to share 3 real life use cases for sets in higher education industry, a little presentation I like to call Sets Education, if you will. All of my examples are going to use IPEDS data. I'm going to put the link for that in the chat. IPEDS data is publicly available for anyone who wants to use it, as long as you have some patience to kind of muck through it, if you will. It's huge and it's very complicated, and you have to kind of know what you're looking for. I will publish this workbook to Tableau Public after the presentation so that you can download it and work with it to learn more about sets. So we'll jump right in. All right, so this first part is going to overlap with a few of the things that Steve talked about in his presentation. We're going to talk about using sets as a filter. We're not going to get anywhere near as complicated as Steve did those. So what we're looking at here is a table of enrollment statistics by state, sector, and institution. And if you notice, this table is 2,490 rows long. It is way too long to find what you're looking for easily. So we're going to use sets to make it a little bit more manageable. So first we're going to right click on state and create a set.
So
and
Ginny,
I'm going to, I'm sorry.
So Ginny, real quick. So there's always new things that people learn in Tableau. Do you mind showing where you saw all those rows in case someone doesn't know how to automatically see that?
Yeah, so it's down here. It's really small in the bottom left corner. We have 2,490 rows by 9 columns. And if I could make that bigger on the screen, I would, but I don't know how.
No, that's good. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to go ahead and select North Carolina because that is where I live and where I work. And I'm going to name this NC Set. All right. So now I've got that. And if I just automatically drag it over onto the filters, as Steve said, it's going to filter this to only show the states that are in that set, which is North Carolina. But if I right click and drag it over, it's going to prompt me, and I can either choose values, all values, or I can choose in and out. And I'm going to choose that in and out Boolean, which is going to allow me to say, show everything in North Carolina. Now, we're going to repeat that with sector. Just create a set. In this case, I'm going to have public 4-year and click OK. And that's going to limit our schools even more. And if I want to click on this and show the set, I can come over here and format our filters so that it's a kind of a toggle. You can toggle back and forth and let your user decide what they want to look at. All right, so now we've made it slightly more manageable. And it's very versatile as well. As Steve said, you know, it lets your user kind of play with what's in the set or not in the set. Now, if we only wanted to see the top 15 institutions by highest enrollment, we could go in and make another kind of set using our top in. Let's see, top institutions. So if we wanted to look at the top 15 and used our head count sum as our condition and click OK. Then I'm going to put that into our filters and boom, it all disappears. Now, don't panic. We can fix this. This is because of the order of operations. I don't have time to go into the specifics of that today, but if you notice the sets and top ends, those filters come after context filters. And we saw Steve put some of his filters in the context, and that is why we're going to go in and add both our North Carolina set and our sector public 4-year set to our filters. Now we have our top 15 North Carolina public 4-year institutions with their enrollment. All right, so next we're going to use our sets in order to sort a viz. So this is an example modeled after a dashboard I built for our admissions team. In the example, our user wanted to click on a state in the map and then bring that state to the top of the list in the bar chart below, because otherwise you'd have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. All right, so in order to do this, we're going to use steps or sets. So first we'll go to our bar chart and we're going to click on state again, and we're going to create a set. And this time, I'm not going to put any values in the set. We're just going to leave it blank and hit OK. Now I'm going to drag that onto rows in front of our state, and we can see that every single one of these is out of the set. And that is what we want. That's what we expect to see. Now I'm going to go to our map and drag that same set onto color. And we see again, everything is out of the set. Now we'll go back to our dashboard and we're going to build out our set action, because right now if I click on a state, it's not changing anything in the bar graph. So if we come up to dashboard and go to actions, we can add an action to change the set values. In this case, we want to use our map to target the set that is our state set. And when we run this action, we want it to add values to the set. And the reason I choose this is I want them to be able to click on one state. And then if they want to add another, they can click on another. It's just going to keep adding those values to the set. But when we clear the selection, I want it to remove all the values, and that will reset the bar graph to be in alphabetical order. I'm not going to run this on a single select. We're going to call this action map to sort and hit OK and OK. Now if I click on a state, we can see it comes to the top of the list. And if I click on another, it does the same thing, and it will continue to do this for as many states as I choose. And if I click on a state that I've already selected, it will clear the sort and everything will come out of the set and everything will go back to alphabetical order. Now to just clean this up a little, because I don't like my end user to see the in and out of set, I will come in here and hide the header. And now we have a nice clean dashboard. All right, so for our final example, we're going to get a little bit more complicated. One thing I get asked to do a lot is an asymmetrical drill down. So you might be familiar with hierarchies where you hover over the state and click the plus sign, and that will drill down to city, and then you can click the plus sign again and drill down to zip code. And if you realize, that just makes our table so long, because when you click on a hierarchy, it automatically expands every single state and every single city, not just the one that you selected. So sets allow us to do a drill down that only shows you your selection. So this is the dashboard that we're going to build this on. It's made up of a table and some spark lines. And I've already limited these to show the states most commonly accredited by SAC-COC with 3 years of fall enrollment data. And the reason that we have to use an asymmetrical drill down here instead of a hierarchy is because this is limited to fit the entire view on both the table and the spark lines. That is the only way to keep them lined up correctly. And this is modeled after an actual dashboard that I've built for our student credit hours, so real life case. What we want to do is click on the state, and then that will bring up a list of cities in that state, and then click on a city and bring up a list of institutions in that city. So we're going to go to our table and build that out. All right, so first, notice that I'm using a copy of our state field because the original is in a hierarchy. I don't want to use the one in a hierarchy. So I'm going to right-click on our copy of the state and create a set. And this one I'm going to name State Drill Down Set. And for this case, again, I'm going to go ahead and select North Carolina and hit OK. Now I'm going to right-click on my set and create a calculated field. And we'll call this City Drill Down because we want to go from state to city. Make that a little bigger. So it's a very simple calculation. If a city is in the state drill down set, then we want our city, again, the copy of the field. Else we want the state, copy, end. That's it. So if I click OK, drag this out onto my rows, I'll see it's working correctly. We have our states here. Since North Carolina is in the set, we have our cities here. And now we want to create one more step to show the institutions. Now, this is the part that I usually mess up if I haven't done this in a while. So in this case, I want to right-click on the city drill down calculation and create a set, not on the city field itself. So if I create a set here, you'll see, like our table, I've got some state abbreviations, I've got some cities. So I want to make sure I select a city. I'm going to select Greensboro and hit OK. Now I have my city drill down set, and I'm going to create a calculated field using that, and I'm going to call this one Institution Drill Down. And then this one is very similar to the previous calculation. So if something is in our city drill down set, then we want the institution. Now, institution is not a copy of the original field because it's not in a hierarchy. Else, we want nothing. So I put two quotations, nothing in between, end. And hit OK. Now I'll bring our institution drill down up to rows. And here we see that Greensboro, North Carolina, since that is the selected city, is showing the institutions. Now I'm going to come over to our spark lines and put the city drill down and the institution drill down in the same order here. But I want to hide the headers because spark lines will not work correctly. They don't format correctly if you have the headers showing. All right, so now if I click on this, again, nothing's happening. It's not changing anything because we haven't set up our set actions. So we'll go in here and add an action to change the set value. This one is going to be state to city. So we're going to drill down from the state to the city. I'm going to use my table as the source sheet and target the state drill down set. This time I do want it to run on a single select only, and I do want it to assign the values to the set, and clearing the selection will remove all values from the set. And we'll create a second one, much the same, but this one's going to target the city drill down set. And we'll name this one city to institution. And click OK. Now, if I click on Georgia, we see all the cities in Georgia. And if I click on Atlanta, we'll see the institutions in Atlanta. However, you'll notice over here, our spark lines, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what goes with which row over here. So I like to go in to my spark lines and click my state drill down set and my city drill down set. I hold down the control key, drag them over onto color, and then I can edit these colors however I like. So if I want to have a dark blue, gray, light orange is good. Now when I look at my breakdown, I can clearly see what we're looking at. One last thing I like to do, because if you click on this and clear the set, I don't like seeing these two lists of state abbreviations right next to each other. It's very redundant. So I like to go to my table and create another calculated field called state label. And that is a very simple calculation as well. So if, let me make it a little bigger. If your state is in the state drill down set, then, whoops, then we want to see the state copy. Else, nothing, end. Hit OK. And then we put the state label in between state copy and city drill down. Nothing is showing right now, and that's because nothing is in the set. And we'll hide this header. Then when we come back, if we click, we see our state right here, our other states, and our cities for the selected state, and then our institutions for the selected city. And that concludes our SETS education lesson of the day. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Set questions right now, Ginny, but SETS education, absolutely amazing. I do have to say, one of the things that I loved was seeing that sets with the right click drag into the filters, that it does that dimensional which one you want to click. I'd first seen that when it came to like moving dimensions or measures over those pills over into the rows. So it was great to see that sets in the filters as well. But also this formatting tip for this is also amazing. Love that. So this has been absolutely fantastic. Some people have noted they want to try this with a world map, and just absolutely fantastic. This is great.
You can also do it with a scatter plot. That's fun.
Ooh, scatter plots. Those are fun. Those are definitely fun. But I do also like how clean these spark lines are. Could never get them that clean myself, but this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Ginny.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I know you said it'd be up on Tableau Public a little bit later. So once that's there, we'll send it out with the rest, with this recording and everything else for everyone later on.
Great.
Thank you. Now, want to welcome up my co-lead, Sarah Carr. We have our attendance prize for those of you who are here. Sarah, you want to tell them what they're winning?
Yes, and thank you, Steve and Virginia, for your presentation so far. They were amazing and kind of making sets doable for and helping and use sets to like kind of level up the dashboards, kind of bam them up a notch. The winner of a $25 gift card to the Tableau store, where you can get maybe a DataPride t-shirt, is Ian Cross. So congratulations, Ian. And I'll send you a DM in the chat to get your email address to send that to you. So congratulations.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Ian. So fantastic. So we have one more presentation today. Super excited to bring forth Erica Hughes, Tableau and Alteryx consultant with the Information Lab. I do have to say Erica's challenges for Workout Wednesday. She's been working with Tableau for 3 years, and half of that has been also helping out with Workout Wednesday. I was sad to miss her Workout Wednesday live demo at Tableau Conference this year, but Workout Wednesday is such a great thing, and Erica's challenges are always so much fun. So Erica.
Thanks, Lawrence. It's always nice to hear people appreciating the challenges. I get to just be a part of a whole team that's building them, but yeah, it's been really fun to have to think of all these new challenges. I'll just share my screen. Apologies, I am recovering from a bit of a cough, so if you hear me coughing in the background, I'll try not to make it too loud. I'm going to start by showing you the Workout Wednesday website page. Hopefully you can all see that. If you're not familiar, then we put together weekly challenges in Tableau and now also Power BI and CRM analytics, if any of you are working in those areas. But it all started with Tableau about 5 years ago, and I've been involved for the last year and a half. So I started in January 2022. These challenges cover all kinds of things in Tableau, basically giving you practical applications and interesting scenarios where you might require things like sets to solve them. Or you get to explore areas of Tableau that you may not get to explore in your day-to-day work life, but are still fun to get into. So my most recent one was a spatial challenge, which people often enjoy. And it did involve a bit of a drill down behavior, like Ginny was just talking about. So the challenge that we're covering today is from the beginning of the year. It's 2023 week 9. And I gave it quite a vague name. I just called it a tricky filter because I try not to give too much away of how to solve things. And I try to leave it open for people to solve it in however it makes sense to them. But this challenge came about by talking to a client who had an interesting problem within their dashboard. They wanted to be able to filter by certain cities. So you'll see the behavior here. We have a list of a bunch of cities, but they didn't want to remove some of their key cities, or in this case, they had a null value, which they always wanted displayed in their bar chart. It's a null value that wasn't displayed in some of their other charts, and they didn't want it displayed in their filter because they never wanted that to be removed. So I adapted that challenge to our trusted Superstore, and I decided let's have some 5 key cities within a state, and I chose these cities based on population. And we want to effectively compare those cities to some other cities where we get to choose which other cities we're comparing to. So Tableau Public's just reloading there. But if I click on here, we'll see those other cities coming in. And if I were to empty this filter altogether, we should still have those 5 key cities remaining. But you'll notice that nowhere in this filter menu do we see Columbus and Cleveland and the rest of them. So I really struggled to come up with, to resolve this challenge for this client, in fact, and this is why I thought it would be a brilliant Workout Wednesday challenge. But I did come across this blog post. So if I click on the hints here, this blog post suggested using 2 sheets where one of them is kind of hidden in there somewhere, and it uses just a single set. So I've provided this blog post in here, and you can read through it and go and explore it. But the beauty of these challenges, and one of the reasons why I created it, is I knew that someone would come up with a better solution and that there had to be a better solution. And luckily, Rosario Gauna, who some of you may have seen in the Tableau community, she's got about 500 visits on Tableau Public. She's absolutely incredible. Honestly, in my view, probably the #1 Tableau user out there. She created a brilliant solution, which is more along the lines of what I originally tried. And that is what I want to show you today. So I'm not going to be revealing all of the elements of this challenge, But I will show you that key sort of light bulb moment that I had. And then I'll leave the rest of the challenge for you guys to have a go at if you would like, because it does incorporate a lot of what Steve and Ginny were talking about in terms of thinking about what's in the set, thinking about what's out of the set, sorting using sets, coloring using sets, and having that concept, that overriding concept of filters being a subset of sets themselves. We also use sets in a lot of calculations here, and that is what we are going to have a look at. So in Rosario's solution, she only has a single sheet, and this is what I was going for originally. So she uses a single sheet and she uses two sets. She thinks about which are the key cities in the set and which are the key cities, or sorry, which are the non-key cities. And she improved my challenge in the sense that we can now dynamically choose which cities are key cities as well. So I could just look at the top 3 that I have on there. I could remove Cincinnati. I could remove Bowling Green from there as well. And we can dynamically determine which items go in there. And as soon as the items come out of the key city set, they end up being populated in this non-key city set. So I now have Bowling Green and Cincinnati in this list, which I can still add in, but now they are in that gray color. So it's a really, really fantastic, beautiful solution that Rosario came up with. To break down what that solution requires and why this is such a challenge, this behavior is such a challenge, I'm going to look at things in a table. I always tend to look at things in a table. And we're going to start with thinking about this key cities set. So this key city set is manually kind of created. We choose our sets that go in this set, as we've seen the others do. And we can just click OK and leave that there as it is. But then we want to be able to determine what if something is not in the set? What do we want to do then? So we can create a calculation. And in this calculation, we can say if something is not in that key city set, then I want to return the city. Otherwise, bring back a null. So this is going to create that filter of all of the cities that are not in the key city set. So we can choose how many gray bars to include in our chart in the end. So if I click OK, we can see this is this column here where we're showing all of the cities that are not in the set, and then we're getting this null. If I were to create a filter just based off of this calculation, the problem is we are going to get that null value in the filter itself, which is going to allow us to remove all of these from our bar chart, which is not the behavior that we want. So I did in fact build a set from here, which I could then show as a filter, or not even as a filter, my apologies. Well, we have this set over here where I can remove the nulls, but then that's going to filter those values out, which is not quite the behavior that we want. So what we can do next, or my idea for the solution for this, is we kind of want to include these nulls, give them a label of something that is already in these gray areas. Because if we label this null as Bowling Green, for example, then it's not going to get filtered out, or it's going to appear as Bowling Green in this menu here. And we're not going to see those nulls, so we're not going to be able to filter them out in quite the same way. So I will get round to Rosario's ultimate calculation, but if I hit edit in here, the way to remove null as an option from our filter menu is that we can use an LOD with this min function. So one thing I wasn't aware of before this challenge, which I suppose could have been slightly obvious, is that a null is never going to be the min or the max of any value that you compare it to. So if you have a list of values and null is included, min and max are going to always choose the value that is not null. So in this case, min is always going to find the min of these cities that are not in the key cities set. So even if null is returned, overall, with this LOD, we're finding the min city not in the city set. If I bring this onto my view now, we can see that the minimum city alphabetically that's not in our set is Bowling Green. If I go to my key cities, and I now do include Bowling Green in my key cities, my new min city is going to be Cincinnati. So Cincinnati is not in that key set, and so it's now the minimum, and that's the value that's getting populated across the board here. So the final thing that gets us to Rosario's final calculation here is going to look a bit convoluted, but we now have the option of choosing a city that is not a key city, or choosing this minimum value, which is never going to be null. As we see, it's always going to be the minimum of the remaining cities. So the challenge here was to remove that null from the filter visually for our end user, and this is the calculation that helps us to achieve that. So one last thing, if I bring this one onto the view, we can see that all of these cities that are not in the set are being populated with their actual names, whereas this null is kind of being grouped in with Cincinnati. So it never does appear in that list there. So now we can combine what is in the set with what is not in the set to ultimately find, what is in the key city set. And we can create a set of all of these things that are not in the key cities to determine which items to keep in our view overall. So at the moment, we have all of the cities in Ohio. If I bring in things that are in the key city set, those are the colored, sort of burgundy colored cities at the top. And things that are not in the key city set are items that are selected in this menu for our non-key cities. But they are also not in that set there. So I can see here, I've got certain things in these gray colored cities that are not in the main set, but they are in this non-key city set. So they appear in our view and they will appear in our filter menu. So let's go back to the original challenge to see what exactly that means. This is my non-key cities set. These are all of the gray bars. Only the ones that are selected will appear in the view. And if I add more things to the set, then I can have as many gray bars in the view as I choose. I can now leave that and then go to my key city set, which includes all of the cities in the view. And if I choose one that is already in the view but gray, for example, Lancaster, which is that big gray bar at the top there, I can swap it from a gray bar to a burgundy bar, and it just moves from one set to the other set. Once that's gone into the key city set, it's no longer available in the gray set. So it may seem a bit convoluted. It's certainly a tricky challenge. Certainly one of those things that even after seeing it, you probably have to think about it a little bit. But in the interest of time, I will leave it there and just leave it with the idea. And hopefully, if nothing else, I can encourage you all to get involved in some Workout Wednesday challenges. As I say, from at least my challenges, the majority are based on things that I see in the real world, things that people actually ask for in the real world when I speak to clients. And so hopefully you can all find uses for them in your work if you work with Tableau as well. But that's all for me. I'll jump back and see if there are any questions from anyone.
Thank you so much for that, Erica. There are no questions right now. We've been posting links not only to the Workout Wednesday overall, but to this specific challenge. Definitely another thing to work around with. Definitely check out Rosario's answer as well, and really look at everything with that. So it's absolutely fantastic looking at sets in those ways and fixing that problem and what you just said, the real world applications of the WoW challenges. I know so many things that I've used in my experience that came from WoW, especially seeing as my first ever Tableau Public Viz was a WoW challenge. So, you know, been so great. And so thank you for going through that and really showing that there. And yeah, everyone's really looking at the WoW challenges and just loving seeing that whole thing. So thank you so much. And thank you for your time and for being here as well.
Thank you for having me. Funnily enough, I've had about 2 people within my workspace ask if that's something that is possible, and I've been able to direct them to the challenge and the solution since then. So it's definitely something that's coming up, which is cool to see.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's always great to be able to have a solution when people ask and be able to direct to something that's easy and able to show and actually have the workbooks and everything else too. So fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists, for Steve, Ginny, Erica, for coming and giving us a spectacular conversation. And we will definitely be having Tableau Public Viz and links sent out with the recording and everything else. We will, coming soon, we'll have an email survey and the wrap up of this event today sent out. The event recording will be on our YouTube channel, as well as we'll be cross-posting over into Tableau's as well. So you'll be able to check this recording, and we'll be showing that. It will also be linked in to the actual event page for this event. So super excited for that. And then just as a heads up, we are super excited to announce the save the date and the actual RSVP page for our event on October 11th. We are super excited to have Lisa Truscott and Nicole Klassen and Kimberly Coots on to talk so many different things, mainly what is scary and getting over those scary things, from visualizing different data to feedback. And we are excited that this will also be on National Coming Out Day here in the US, so October 11th. So we'll be definitely diving in with individuals across the LGBTQ plus community also in data around everything there. So if there are no questions, comments, concerns, or manifestos, we want to thank everyone for being here, to our wonderful panelists, my wonderful co-host, Sarah, and to everyone for being here and taking the time to join us today. We hope you had a wonderful time. We hope you learned so much, and we hope to see you again. Thank you so much, everybody.